But the commitment is when the totality of yourself starts to come together and move towards and in, and it's an entering what you are, what we all are. And the totality of yourself, this beautiful, vast, and brilliant spirit that we all share, this heart that has never been divided by anyone. We've never been divided from one another in the heart. It doesn't know how to do that. It's impossible. By our shared journeys, our shared life journeys, we have so much to offer through everything that we have ever experienced. We can speak of our karmic experiences, we can speak of our family experiences, our ancestral experiences. We can share the journey that has brought us into places of deep suffering. I would imagine that there's not one of us within this room that has not shared or has not experienced deep suffering. We have that to share. We have that to offer. It isn't our identity. It's what has it's been the fire that actually, in most instances, it's brought us to this moment, to this place, that's suffering. We wanted something else, something more. And we knew within us that was possible. It may have been hidden, that possibility, but we knew that was possible. Something within us knew that. We're sharing all of the skills that have come about, all that we have learned in our journeys, multiple journeys. That's of benefit. That's to be shared. And what you begin to see, the more the emptying out, the more the freeing, the releasing, the liberation of all of the different conditioned ideas that we've absorbed along the way, the more they're brought to the surface of consciousness and therefore liberated, because it's only bringing the unconscious to the conscious. And then they begin to liberate. It isn't like you just keep moving them around and getting better and better kind of experiences. They actually dissolve. Liberation is the correct term, the correct description. And the more open and the more spacious and the more empty that we are, that we become, then the living spirit begins to occupy that space that was temporarily obscured by misunderstandings, by wounding, by absorption, by all that we've gathered along the way. And when that spirit starts to, occupy what perhaps previously was occupied by separate identity and suffering, then the spirit begins to use all of the beautiful skills and uniquenesses that we've gathered along the way. So the totality includes the person. It includes the individual. It includes the human life, not the perfect human life, but the human life that has been wounded and the human life that has, created pain for oneself and pain for others. It actually always was quite innocent. It includes, what we call the ego. And the ego is just all the conditioning that seems to, kind of accumulate in this position I call me, that I then begin to identify myself as. And yes, even the ego can actually then become, I always say it just gets on board. It starts to serve this self-recognition. We've been taught, if you have a long history of the spiritual remembering or recognition, whatever you want to call this, that you kill the ego, you try to stomp the ego out, you deny the ego, you try to change it and dress it up and clean it up and whatever it is that we're taught to do. We become at war with our minds. Our minds should think this, our minds should be quiet, our minds shouldn't think that. We shouldn't identify as our minds. And of course, you don't identify, but the mind too starts to get on board and serves the life. And it does so by first seeing what the mind is saying and what the contents of the mind is. And in seeing it and welcoming it and bringing it from the unconscious to the conscious, it liberates. But then it can come into right relationship. The mind begins to serve the life instead of the life being driven by the mind. The mind's not a mistake. The human individual is not a mistake. It's not something that needs to be stomped out. Like we become spiritual warriors, we're trying to get rid of but it's in the welcoming, it's in bringing it forth, it's in the seeing, it's in the touching, it's in the loving, it's in the, the welcoming, that it then can be liberated and you become free of the dictatorship, of the suffering of the mind, and then the mind can actually get into right relationship and serve the life. There isn't anything within this room, anything that you can see or experience or that's not created by the living spirit moving through mind. So it's not to be stomped out, it's not to create war, it's not to deny. So this commitment to really look deeply. First of all, what is it that's actually seeing? What's actually looking? What's actually listening? What's actually welcoming? What is that? That's the first and probably the most important inquiry. What is it that knows when you're lost in meditation? What is it knows that now you're present? What is it knows that when you go to sleep? And what is it knows that when you're dreaming? And what is it that knows when you awake? What is that? What is always absolutely the most intimate and the most constant presence in your life? What is that?